Hello and welcome to the 2022 Slugger O'Toole Party Election Broadcast Awards for this election season. We are going through each party election broadcast and we're ranking them out of 10 to come up with the best. Which party has put their best foot forward, which has the most entertaining music, and which has the best messaging. And to go through all this, we have got the same panel. We did such a good job in 2019. Alliance won that year, and Alliance, of course, scored big in that election. So we thought we'll get back our election panel. And we've got Alison Morse, who's the crime and security correspondent from the Belfast Telegraph. We have Chris Brown, who is the director of Brown O'Connor Communications. We have our very own Alan Meben, and I am David McCann, and you are very welcome. So let's start off with the DUP's party election broadcast, but we want you to go and watch it now on the iPlayer. You can click the link on this post to go and listen to it. So please go and watch that now and come back and hear our verdict. Okay, so we're going to start with the DUP's election broadcast. Alison, what was your perspective on the DUP's effort this time?
I thought it started off really well because it was very different from what you expect from a DUP party conference. They were very casually dressed, you know, there was none of the pinstripe suits of old. They were all out for a wee dander, and they were trying to be very positive. So there was a lot of talk about healthcare, childcare, some boy with a thing saying broadband on the back of his vest. I'm assuming that's to say that they're going to bring us all high-speed broadband. And then the protocol seemed to come after all of those sort of cost of living, very real issues. It started off well. I think it ended badly because they fell into the trap of going very negative, and there was a lot of mention of Sinn Féin. You shouldn't really be mentioning another party in your party political broadcast, and said they kept going on about a border poll. And we know, you know, regardless of what happened at the end of this election, it'll not trigger a border poll. You know, there's very specific mechanisms for that, and it doesn't matter who the first or deputy first minister is. So I think they started well. They ended poorly. It was a game of two halves.
Game of two halves. Okay, Chris, what do you think about it?
I thought it was some lovely imagery, the Tourism NI style advert, as these things tend to do, very drone heavy. Mountains great, but I don't know about the visual of leading his party up a hill.
In the dark.
In the dark. Yeah, exactly. So the metaphor around that was a bit of a mixed one, and something I certainly picked up on. But you know, they got all the touch points in early: health, education, jobs, as they usually do. The moment of the high-vis jacket really stood out to me.
Yep.
Why would they say they wanted connectivity and the best broadband in Europe of a place they don't want to be connected to?
Yep.
So I found that very strange. Where do you get a one-off DUP high-vis jacket as well? And a guy walking up the road with a load of wire under his arm? Very bizarre. Then Wallop, round 150, 2 minutes. Sinn Féin border poll, and at that stage he's walking down the hill again, ironically. So I don't know what that means in my mind when I'm assessing this sort of stuff. Fear factor comes in, the media clippings of how Sinn Féin are going to destroy the world and do all these mad things as well. Didn't see Sammy anywhere. So he was obviously hid under the cupboard or under the stairs for a while.
He was in the back of a car.
So same as Alison, you know, started off nice and had a warm, loving feeling about the whole thing. Completely lacklustre at the very end, so not their best effort.
Yeah, and he seemed to leave his troops behind as well a wee bit. I think he seemed to be walking a good few steps ahead of them. Alan, what did you make of it?
This was the first one that I watched and of the batch, and it kind of probably started me off in a really funny place because you just kind of you become quite cynical when you kind of watch these. It's hard not to take the piss out of them to some extent. I mean, you have people walking in the dark. Is the DUP leader? I'm thinking, is he scared of the previous leaders? Is that why he can only walk first thing in the morning with his mates in case they spot him, or is he too busy? When it was captioned, I noticed that he wasn't Sir Geoffrey Donaldson, which he normally is. He was just Geoffrey Donaldson. But they did have to put underneath DUP leader in case we had got a bit mixed up with who was currently in charge.
There was quite a few though for at one point, so it's probably best to clarify
it could be confusing for the voters. And like none of them had a bag, but suddenly at the top there must be a vent. It was kind of like as if there was no magic money tree, but there was a magic vending machine that gave them all a cup and that they could all kind of drink from. So continuity wise, I mean, and these are not the things I was meant to be kind of looking at because you probably wanted me to look at policy. I couldn't quite figure out, was it the Mourns or Divis?
It wasn't Divis.
His home.
Yeah, it was definitely Mourns.
He said on talk back he likes taking early morning walks up the Mourns.
Well, that's grand, but it explains why somebody had to get out of bed very early to do it. The wording of it. By the end, it was kind of like fixing our health service, tackling the cost of living crisis, and replacing the protocol. and focusing on a divisive border poll. Everybody, nearly all of these have a border poll has an adjective beforehand. Very adjective heavy, this stuff. It wasn't bad, actually. I mean, it did have a bit of a kind of film noir to it, but it was quite a good place to start from, actually, to compare the rest.
It was actually one of the better gender balanced DUP PBs that we've seen. I remember I think it was back in 2015 they did this PB with a room full of men. It was only Arlene. It was only Arlene was the only one in the room. This time I thought they got that right. I would have liked to have seen some of the candidates that were right, because like he's got people like Diane Forsyth, I think I spotted in the video, who all good communicators. I would just like to have seen them actually display their.
But the new leader needs to be heard because nobody knows who he is. Well, they, they need to be reminded who this is his tone. You're voting for Jeffrey, not.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tale. It was a tale of two halves, really, for me as well. The mixed messaging at the end about the border poll, and again, the focus on Sinn Féin kind of distracted from some of the DUP policy kind of focus of government. And interestingly enough, COVID didn't really get a mention. When you think about the DUP had some really COVID focusing departments like economy and obviously DAERA with Brexit. They didn't really reference anything Edwin had done just before the executive came down. So that was interesting. So Alison, out of 10, what will you give the DUP's PB?
I am going to give it a 6 because I thought it had potential. It had the bones of a good party election broadcast, but it just lost its way.
6. Chris?
Go for a 6 again. You've touched on it there, David. It's one of these things where they could have talked about all the money they handed out in the last 2 years and all the wealth they kind of created in a time where nobody was really working or out of their own house. So I think they've maybe missed a bit of a trick there. So 6.
6. Oh.
I gave it a 7 and then I brought it back down to a 6 because when I watched some of the rest, I kind of realised this was actually fairly good. In a sense, this is better than some of the ones that we probably saw 3 years ago. But at the same time, other people did more with theirs. Or maybe were more ambitious. So it only gets a 6, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit more charitable. I went with a 7. So I thought, do you know what? In terms of some of the other, and again, I'm comparative. Yeah. In terms of some of the other DP efforts, I thought they upped their game. I think this will be a recurring theme amongst some of the parties this year, up in their games. But again, that was the verdict on the DP's PB. But let's move on. We're going to go and view Sinn Féin's party election broadcast now, and again, if you want to view this, you can just click on the link on the post and you can see Sinn Féin's effort for 2022 and come back and hear what we have to say about it. Okay, so let's start with Sinn Féin. I'm going to start with Chris this time. What did you make of Sinn Féin's effort in 2020? In 2019 we had it was a very mixed bag of what we all thought about them in 2019, but what did you think about it?
Overall, I thought this was a good production. It was quality scripting. John Finucane, as Director of Elections, giving it to the camera, actually didn't look like he was reading whatsoever. So that sort of conveys a sense of sincerity, and actually from the first person, and giving a bit of background of his own existence as well. There was a lot of, now they're probably all Sinn Féin activists, but it looked like they were out talking to the electorate and listening to them as well, which kind of visually was very important to do that other parties kind of haven't really. There was, in the middle of it, about 20 seconds of just music. Nobody talking, and I think that, I don't know, but is that purposeful? And actually it worked a treat if it was, because it kind of helped segment the John Finucane piece into then what you see is the iconography of Belfast, the East Belfast, the cranes. Has Michelle O'Neill and Sinn Féin ever been down that neck of the woods politically? Probably not. They're showing it off as part of their full court press when it comes to other parts of the north that they're looking to get into. Then at 2:30, this sort of ethereal image of Michelle O'Neill pops out of the lagan with the sunshine in the background.
Did she come up with a bubble?
Truman Show type thing, and I was kind of like, was it framed properly? Yes, it was. Did it look a bit strange? Yes, it did. So they got across all their messaging, what they do, and a wee bit of Irish in the end as well. But yet again, drone footage heavy. But overall, quite a solid showing. Okay,
Alan, what do you think of Sinn Féin's PB?
For a while, I mean, we're kind of looking at them in a funny way because we're kind of not looking at them just because it's come on TV. We've deliberately gone to see it. So you're kind of overthinking, I think, a lot of... So kind of effectively, I mean, this is not a particularly serious look in some ways at the PBs. But like John Finucane, I mean, he's the Sinn Féin Director of Elections. I immediately was wondering north or south. Does he do both, or is this only the north, or do we not have to be told that? Why John? He's an MP. He's not actually standing, so it's kind of a strange choice. Is that the bet? Is like he the safest most loved person to put on? Is he the authority figure? His tie keeps changing colour, and then sometimes he doesn't have a tie, and his shirt really looks like he needs a bigger shirt. Don't sue me, John, but it does look
But
like
notice he was going around the waterworks quicker than David McCann runs it.
John Finucane can't do the park run faster.
I suspect he needs a slightly bigger shirt size because it looked very tight at the top. Or maybe it's just a weird style, but anyway, don't sue me. It's lots of drone footage. It did feel like a 2-minute PEB that had been stretched out to 3 because it not only had more space in it, but it had huge bits where you were waiting for the next thing to happen. And that wretched piano, some piano player in Belfast has, unfortunately it's from a music library, but I mean would earn a mint if he could provide stuff for every single thing. We should really do a whole set of marks for the piano. It was kind of good. Now is the time. There's a good literary device at the end. Now is the time. I mean, most of these were well written. But again, it only really showed off their top 3 people in a sense. It didn't tell you that they have a load of candidates who are all very nice to vote for, please do. So it was very much kind of just, it felt like it was asserting their own message, and they've done that for 30 years, so we kind of know what the message is.
Okay. Alison, what do you think of Sinn Féin's PB?
So really high production value. You can see they invested in it. Again, kids, if any of you don't know what to do when you leave school by drone, I'm telling you, you'll make a fortune making party election broadcasts. Lots of drone footage. I can see the benefit of putting John Finucane front and centre. That sort of story about, the middle class unionist mother, the working class Republican father from a Republican community, all of that. But he's not standing, and they needed to showcase their assembly team. And I do think that Michelle O'Neill has really grown into herself in recent years, and she would have been a better person to front that up. The parts of it that we seen of her, she was very natural. She seemed very relaxed. I like the sort of ticked all the boxes. So there was, you seen the GA, lots of stuff about the rural community. You see her standing in the middle of a farm, all an important demographic for them. They're going to tick all those boxes. They didn't mention any other party, which I think is a wise thing to do in such circumstances.
They did mention the TUV, which we might come back to.
But they should have shown more of their actual assembly candidates. They should have put Michelle O'Neill, I think, front and centre. I think that once again, and I remember sitting here doing the last party election broadcast, and we said the same thing, using candidates who aren't standing. It's as if the party election broadcast is designed only for other Sinn Féin members and voters. It's not reaching out to other people because it's not showcasing their other talent, and I do think that that's where they missed a trick. But I do think as a party election broadcast, it was very upbeat. They're clearly in an upbeat mood this election anyway. It was very upbeat, it was very positive, and it certainly ticked all the boxes of the things that they need to tick, the Irish language community, GA community, rural community. And they're sort of heartland Republican based, John Finucane and the waterworks, all of those sort of things. But I do think they missed a trick in not putting some of their younger, talented assembly members in.
I mean, the PB to me kind of just really brought home Sinn Féin's strategy in this election. It is to export the 2019 North Belfast campaign to the other 17 other constituencies, because North Belfast was the only positive story that Sinn Féin had to tell in 2019. It was bad drubbing for them everywhere else. And again, being from North Belfast, we love seeing North Belfast being the centre of the universe. But I agree that I thought the focus on John so much, I thought it kind of diluted away from, again, Deirdre Harkey was a really forward-facing minister during COVID. Yeah. Why didn't they profile her? Why didn't they? And the other thing is, the only critique I would have of Sinn Féin in this election, I think the time for real change message just jars. I would think a Jacinda Ardern, let's keep moving slogan would be better, because it banks what they've done well in the executive, and also that's essentially what they're asking. They're asking people to vote them to go back into the executive. Yeah. Whereas the real change thing, for me, I just think, maybe because I'm a political nerd, I just kind of think, you've been the largest party now for nearly 20 years. Like 2003 was when you overtook the SDLP. Yeah. The real change thing I just didn't think worked as much. But having said that, I thought, again, really crisp message. I would like to have seen a lot more of Michelle O'Neill, because I agree with Alison. I think she's ran a brilliant campaign. She's ran the campaign she needed to run. I actually thought it was positive they didn't use Mary Lou McDonald, because I think that a bit of the criticism of Sinn Féin in the past has been the talent in the north versus the south. And I think a bit more of that northern, because they do have a lot of good candidates around the place.
Why
not a bit of Danny Baker, who's everyone likes when he was Lord Mayor, really positive, bubbly young fella, Leah Flynn, all of those bright young things. Why not throw some of them in?
And there are a lot of those people out there who I think, and they could have targeted, because Sinn Féin are got vulnerable seats in about 7 or 8 constituencies, and I think
Yeah.
using
This
about
did not help.
15, 20 seconds, that it didn't really profile those.
Yeah.
And again, John, I thought again, the interesting thing was, see if you took Sinn Féin out of it and you just read the script, you could easily have thought this was an alliance PEB with the messaging of it, which is what they need to do. Which is what
David
I'm
gets
not.
blackballed
I'm not
again.
critical. I'm not critical of that because it's exactly what they need to do.
But see, if you watch one of these and it makes you ask the wrong questions, then there's a problem with it. Now, we're not a typical audience necessarily,
Yeah.
but if I sit and go, why John Finucane? And that's the first thing that comes to mind. I'm not hearing the words of what they're trying to say. You're kind of saying
But
similar
what
things.
did you
They're-
tweet the other day?
Well, my-
Your
my-
sister said...
My sister, who lives in North Belfast, on Saturday after I did the park run, which I did very well in, Chris, I don't mind saying.
He did break his personal best a couple of weeks ago.
But she literally was helping the kids out with something, and she said to me, "Jane, John Finucane will get back next month in the election." So
But if you watched the party election broadcast and you weren't, you're a nerd and a geek, David, but if you weren't a nerd, you would wonder, is he going to get back in, or how well is he going to do? Because you would think he was standing.
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, and he's going to be very disappointed. He
But
doesn't
he
have
doesn't
any
get any
votes, he's
votes.
not on the
Yeah.
ballot. You know?
So
numbers and doors.
message-wise, very good. I just have more variety of the talent that
Yeah.
they have would be good.
Agree.
But Alison, out of 10, what would you give this PB?
It's definitely a 7 or an 8. I think that, when you look at it in the round, I would have probably give it higher had they used that middle interlude to show some of their talent rather than just play music and show people walking around. I think I'm going to give it a strong 7.
Strong 7. Okay, Chris.
I would give it an 8. I certainly picked up on this idea that it was the island of Ireland looking out the way. And I think there was a bit of that in there just before that 20-second interlude. And I would, mark it up extra for that, because it wasn't just about the insular part of the island and looking and challenging other people. It was actually going, right, we're going to be part of this because we almost might be part of the South thing. So let's start thinking about the island of Ireland and governance and talking about that, about their international outreach as well. So it's an 8 for me.
8? Oh.
I gave it a 7. In a sense, it loses a mark. It nearly could have had an 8, but it loses a mark for the fact that it was a bit baggy. It was empty in the middle. It showed. Now maybe later on we'll kind of think back and change it, but it just felt like it needed more stuff on it, and it was like they wanted to hit the 3-minute mark, but it didn't have 3 minutes of material.
I give it an 8, so I'm in line with Chris on this, but I would have given it a 9 had they showcased a bit more Michelle O'Neill and a bit more of their other talent. Deirdre Hart, Conor Murphy as well.
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Another, like, showcase their talent. And again, I go back to the time for real change thing. I just think a more, let's keep moving, let's
even
build on what we have.
No foil in there really from the
Yeah.
candidates where that's the struggle,
wonder,
basically.
yeah.
So there we go. But there we go.
So that was Sinn Féin's attempt. We're going to move on to the Ulster Unionist Party this time and take a look at what they put out. You again can click the link on the post to watch this for yourself on the iPlayer, and come back here and listen to our thoughts on the Ulster Unionist PB. Okay, so we're back with the Ulster Unionist effort this year. We're going to start with Alan. Alan, what was your perspective on the Ulster Unionist PB in 2022?
It's very different. It's felt very fresh. Now we've kind of heard this song. It's for anybody who skipped and didn't actually listen to go back and actually watch the things. You've missed a song that could go into Eurovision, and if you took the word union out a couple of times, it would probably do better than the UK normally do. I mean, it's very generic poppy, vaguely ballady. It's very interesting. I thought it was interesting that the entire thing was done with visuals plus this song underneath, except for I think there were 2 points. Robin Swan gets to kind of gulder a wee bit in at one point because he is the king of health and gets to do it. And Mike Nesbitt, strangely, is the other voice that kind of appears at one point. And other than that, there's no Doug. There's no. It's really just this song about Northern Ireland. Making change, young and old. Let's be bold. Say could do well. We're climbing a steeple. I thought it was like we're climbing a dreary steeple, but it turned out we're climbing a steep hill. But so that was a bit of a mistake. And the other thing I noticed was if you took the word union out, this could have been the Green Party PEB. There's basically nothing in this that didn't basically be nice to the world, vague prosperity, do good things. It is quite generic as a song once you take the word union out. So, but I in a sense I loved it because it was fresh, different. It dared to be different. It's a bit like occasionally the DUP had one years and years and years ago with this kind of families in it, or there was the kind of cartoony ones that the Lions did for a while. They did something. They took 3 minutes and they did it differently. Have a whole lot of points from me because you know what, these things are drudgery. You would actually stick to the end of this rather than maybe go on to change channel, see what else is on.
Yeah, Alison, what do you think of the UP's effort?
Well, I watched that this morning, and that song has been stuck in my head ever since. It is the sort of political equivalent of that Baby Shark song. Once you hear it, you will never stop hearing it. It has a cast of thousands, literally a cast of thousands. And that union of people message, because we have everyone. There is the lesser spotted goth. I thought they were extinct. I didn't realise they were still around.
Yeah.
But there was one wee lonely goth outside the City Hall, bless her.
Delighted.
She's just keeping it going, keeping it going. And you know, we see, you know, people in same-sex relationships. You
Though
know,
it's
we
very
say,
subtle under a blanket on a sofa. You could nearly blink and miss it at times. It was very subtle.
Well, a lot of it is. I mean,
Yeah.
it was thrown it in. I thought that they, given the fact that, you know, Doug Beattie is under so much pressure at the minute from that section of loyalism in relation to the protocol, I thought since the party, you know, since the first released this, because this is the same video, isn't it, that they put out, or is it
Less
different?
COVID-y, but they have changed bits of it.
But it's the same song.
Yeah, same song.
Party conference.
So they could have taken out the wee girl with a hurl from then till now in order to sort of get rid of some of that criticism, but they haven't. They've left her in. And some of it I knew, you know, it was filmed a long time ago because Mickey Murray still has his flowing locks and he's cut all those off since they I've been watching their own political broadcast now back to the last one. No, I think that what it is that's what I mean. It could be literally this party election broadcast could be from any party whatsoever.
And
It is.
we do more things better as a team kind of line is very kind of everyone
It
is
could be
awesome.
a Gap commercial. Like it could literally be anything.
Yes.
The problem with the song is, and I get what you're saying about it being Eurovision, is once you hear it, you will not stop hearing it. So I would tell anyone who wants to watch this to do it with extreme caution, because
It's too late. They watched it about 5 minutes ago.
But
because
that song could come on at midnight in Boombox or
Was
something
the
like
song?
that.
oh well, and the one thing I
We
did
think it was
notice
written-
is
it was written for the UUP.
Was
yeah.
it? Right, okay.
Doug is an asset to them because he is not a politician in the politician's sense. He is like, you know, he's an ordinary bloke basically, and he will admit that he's not polished. He's not, you know, a career politician. He has sort of fallen into the situation that he's in. But people seem to like that. They seem to warm to it, and they could have used more of it. The only time that I seen Doug in that is that someone's watching their phone and he's on their phone, and that's the only time you see the party leader, which I thought was strange. They probably could have done more with Robin Swan, given he is the hero of COVID, and that's apparently their big selling point at this time. But, you know, if you just want a party election broadcast that you want people to watch from start to finish, then, yeah, I think they did a good job.
Yeah, okay. Chris?
I think they nailed it. I think they've done a very good job. I actually watched it for my own viewing
But do you
pleasure.
like that
I
song?
was like, it was great. I was like, but it's kind of, I've spent most of today when I should have been working on YouTube trying to find out the Northern Irish energy company that used the Flashdance song as the soundtrack for that. It's like Economy 7 or Phoenix or something in there, and it has triggered an emotion deep inside me from 100 years ago. Do you know, when's the last time you'd ever see an iPhone, an Alexa, AirPods, paddleboarder, and pints in an Ulster Unionist? You know, David Trimble
the Middle Isle of Lidl.
spinning his ermine in the House of Lords. It's the Middle Isle of Lidl, exactly. So, you know, and there was a great new trick as well when the young guy was putting his earpods in. If you listen to it closely, the sound actually, you know, where you put in one earphone and it transfers across. That was transferred into it. So I thought, acoustically, it sounded very interesting and caught my attention right from the very start. So, you know, the Camogue was in there too. Everybody lost their minds. People are now re-losing their minds again. Thought it was very uplifting. No voiceover. I just thought the bit where the lads having the pints in the bar, looking at Doug and Robin.
Nothing wrong with that, Chris. Nothing wrong with that.
People are in there, apart from you guys, obviously. But if you're in your element, drinking pints in a bar, you're not showing.
You probably have your phone in your
So
pocket.
you have never been drinking with David McCann, have you?
So your WhatsApp group must be hilarious. So
It's tea, really. It is tea.
genuinely, I thought it was a good thing. They've done very well here, and that song will be immortalised.
Yeah.
And at the very end, they're the only one that came up with, they had kind of Glory to Ukraine at the end.
Yeah.
Which was a kind of a, I mean, it's very appropriate, but it's also kind of interesting that they thought that was a good thing to put on a party election broadcast. It was, that's slightly strange as it was kind of really desperate box ticking. But,
the parties have a few PBs for elections. I probably should have pointed that out at the start. But for this one,
This is the first one,
This
is
is
it?
the first one. All the PBs we're reviewing are the first
So
ones.
Doug might appear in some of the rest.
Doug does appear in some of the others.
He's got out in the back of
but-
Jeffrey Donaldson's
but
boot
however,
where he
though,
was with Sammy Wilson.
I did notice. So I did notice a couple of things. Yeah, Mike Nesbitt featured, but not in his role as Mike Nesbitt. He's
Yeah.
pretending to be a radio host back to his previous career. I did notice though for the conference PB, they talked about the UUP leading the polls. They don't say that for this one because they've fallen back ever so
Yeah.
slightly. But again, that's a very nerdy thing. But like Chris, like I really enjoyed this song. I remember doing a segment on Talkback a few months ago about PBs, and literally they kept playing this over and over and over again because literally it was just something that literally got people talking. We were talking about political songs, and this was something that really did catch. And if you remember, I reviewed back to 2019 where the UUP did that kind of hostage kind of thing of their local election,
Yeah.
kept sitting on the black sofa, you know, and
Yeah.
Would you
it was
remember
so depressing. It was so sad. And it was so badly done, and then the European broadcast wasn't much better with Danny Kennedy. It was horrendous. This one was so much better. They have really put effort into it. They've really listened, and they've really improved. So I have to say, I thought this was a really catchy tune. Even though it's similar to their conference broadcast in October, I enjoyed watching it again. I really enjoyed looking at it again. It's less
Yeah.
COVID-y. There aren't very many face masks in this, so it's less COVID-y, and I think that that it's good. So Alison, I'll start off with you. What's your score?
I think you have to give it an 8. I mean, you know, it's if you want a party election broadcast to make you feel positive about the future, I think it does that. It ticks the boxes. It maybe doesn't get across policy or any of those sort of things, but does anyone really decide what they're going to vote on, what policy someone says in the party election broadcast? I do think that it would make people feel positive for the future, especially coming out of the COVID period that we've been in.
Yeah. Okay, Chris.
I suppose any election broadcast that has, you know, we're climbing a steep hill, a union of people in it,
Yeah.
gets 8.5 out of 10.
8.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, Al.
Well, I decided to use the kind of the full range as possible, so it gets a 10 on the basis that I think for me it was better than any of the rest. Spoiler alert. And I kind of wonder will it do well for them, because in a sense it emphasises things that people already know and actually put some of their voters off. But if you wanted to have a party election broadcast that defines you in a different way, this is UUP 2.0.
Yep.
And I think well done. You can't do this the next time, by the way. No party wants a song the next time. It's been done. Put it away. Come up with a new gimmick. But they win the gimmick award.
Yeah, I gave it a 9. I thought it was really strong. I'd love to know who sang the song. So, Ulstreamers, if you're listening, let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Release the tapes.
Well,
Let us
what's
know.
the B-side? What's the B-side of the single? You know?
let us know. Okay, well look, we'll move on to our next party. We're going to now review the SDLP.
You should start. You should start, David. Oh no! They
No.
need to watch them first.
There we are. It's here. So if you want to go and watch back the SDLP again, click the link and come back and hear us here for our analysis of it. So we're back and we're now reviewing. We're on party number 4, looking at the SDLP. Chris, kick us off. What did you make of the SDLP's effort this year?
Good opening music. Eastwood portrayed as the rock star coming on stage to give us acoustic set. I thought it was very impressive from the sense that this had to be a one take because it was from the party conference up at the Seamus Heaney Centre. So, you know, Eastwood is a brilliant orator. He's very good at speaking. I think it's a bit of a departure for the SDLP using some of their older folk over the years, but they've certainly played on Column's ability to hold a stream of consciousness for a long time. Very smart because it was very cost effective for them probably, where they doubled up on the overall production cost. But then the subtitles just come out of nowhere. Kind of like, why weren't they the thematic structure of the whole thing? Just mad fuel poverty. All of a sudden,
Fuel, food, energy bills.
crazy. And then that brings me on to the line where I went, Colmata is brilliant, where he says, the hot tempers at Stormont don't heat a single home. That's what they should have on the side of the bus, but they don't. So I think I missed a trick there, but it was a brilliant piece that they could have taken out. All in all, not a bad production, upbeat, plenty of energy in it, but as we discussed maybe earlier on before we recorded this, it kind of played to their own audience. It was their own people. It didn't include the active citizens that Sinn Féin would have had in theirs, or some of the people in the Ulster Unionist one as well.
Okay, Alison, what do you make of it?
So yeah, I mean, the fact that it was filmed at their conference, I thought that's a bit cheap, but at the same time too cost effective. I thought it had a bit of a sort of American political rally style about it. It was a bit, democratic rally, like obviously Biden couldn't run on the stage. He would walk really slowly on the stage, but him running on up, it had that quite sort of American feel about it almost. There was obviously a point made to show them with their children, to give that sort of family together type, we're all one big family. And they did show their new, younger members. So we see the people who are front and centre, the Matthew O'Toole's, Cara Hunters, those sort of people who are showing the future. That happened at the expense of some of their veterans, who are the people who are in a bit of diffs, let's face it. They're like... we like a Dolores Kelly, he's going to have to, hasn't a scrap down there to keep her seat. I think that, it came at the expense of giving our time to the people who maybe needed it. But at the same time, too, I tried to keep it young and upbeat. I do think that they have stole people before profits branding. That people first, I'm pretty sure, and I'm not an expert on fonts, but it looks pretty much the same to me, which could probably be a bit confusing. They're really targeting that West Belfast seat. Maybe they should have shown Paul Doherty more, or let him have a wee bit speaking in it. But apart from that, I mean, it was upbeat. It was generally, quite a sort of positive. But I agree, it could have showed them out and about in their constituencies, maybe, and sort of intersected that a bit with some of the stuff from the party conference.
Okay, Alan, what do you make of it?
I mean, the music, I should admit that I came up with a whole different set of criteria to kind of like score these after a while, but it did become, I was drinking tea at the time, but it did become kind of slightly more surreal as you go on. But I mean, the music is much more pumping than a lot of the rest.
Yeah.
It's very kind of upbeat. It's very Colm Eastwood in a sense. It's the fact that they went from colour to black and white for a wee bit, and then there's a very weird kind of jump cut thing where they kind of, normally you kind of like zoom in at the same time, and this kind of just went sideways. So that's really weird.
Yeah.
It did explain why they were really insistent on doing the party conference in the basically Middle Earth, in the Seamus Heaney home place, because actually that amphitheatre, and it's very crushed, and it's very, everybody's on top of each other, that really works on camera. And it does really feel like, it's kind of quite intense.
I can tell you from being there, they were not sitting on top of each other. They did a good job of making it look bigger.
I was also looking for you in the background, because I know that you were probably sitting on top of the steps somewhere, and you should have been in some of those shots, and you weren't. You're not in it, even though because for the press, you wanted to be in the room to see it. I wasn't very sure about Mark H. Durkin's three-piece suit. I think it doesn't really suit him. But like, who am I sartorially to make anything else? Waistcoats and politics have gone. They are gone. So listen, Mark H. needs to kind of go with the rest. I liked it, but it was very, very wordy. It was very SDLP in terms of there were a lot of words. I thought it was very smart using the speeches, because both Nicola and Colm did good speeches and delivered them very well. And I think that was a really interesting double use, and it paid off. There's no point where you go, oh, you would have preferred not to use that, but you have no other clip. I mean, it is good, but it's too wordy.
Yeah. I thought using the again, I'm probably a bit coloured by the fact that I was there. Yeah. But I just thought that again, you could have showcased a wee bit more of who you are, particularly because one of the comments we've made about the SDLP really since 2019 was, my goodness, their bench is so strong. Their assembly team, their Westminster team is so strong. I would like to have seen a Matthew O'Toole, a Cara Hunter, a Connor and Cara had like a decent. Like conversation with each other.
We see them.
You see them, but you don't hear them. It would have been good to have heard some of that. I thought some of Nicola Mann's best lines in her speech weren't actually included in the thing. I agree with you about Colm's best lines were in about the hot tempers being in there, which was good. But then I wonder how much of that go back to the Finucane problem. How much of that is that, God, I really like that Colm Eastwood.
Cult of personality.
But he's not on the ballot anywhere. He's not running. He's not standing. Yeah.
But sometimes it works.
Sometimes it can work.
Works for Jim. Oh no, it doesn't. Only in Northampton.
No, but Jim is standing in the assembly election.
Well, you spoke about your sister thinking, wondering how John Whittingham was going to do. Paul Doherty's posters are in Kennedy Way, and my mum asked me what Jermaine Derry was doing on posters in West Belfast because she thought it was Colm Eastwood.
but this is the so this is the that was the only thing I wondered about. Look, the music was good. They actually used an actual song as well, which was interesting for the SDLP. Again, I just thought the fact that they only used their conference I just thought they could have broadened it out a bit
Yeah.
more and could have done a wee bit, particularly with and you're right, like Karen McKevitt, who's fighting for that second
Yeah.
in Southdown. Dolores Kelly, you see her, but you don't hear her. I would like to, particularly last time in their last PEB in 2017, they went around the different constituencies and they made good use of their candidates.
But you did hear the strongest voices though.
But you didn't.
But it's things like like Paul doing the stuff that he does in West Belfast, like the work that he does on the ground.
Could have showed some of
It's
that.
amazing.
Yeah.
Like I only see glimpses of it, but the
That doesn't
feedback
fit
work
the
and
feel
all,
of what they
it's
decided to do. The
absolutely-
creative vision was we're going to do it at the
You know,
conference.
Yeah, I mean,
staggering.
the problem is showing food banks is never a good
Yeah.
look.
No, it's not. But I agree with Chris. It would have been good to see a bit more of them in
People
their own
in their,
constituency.
in their
particularly
natural
since
habitat. Yeah.
as their candidates were announced, they went to each candidate's constituency and did videos with them in their constituency. So they do have that footage there, and they just didn't use it for the PEB. So that was why I kind of marked down a wee bit, because they do have the footage there of their candidate, and they do have some, even the candidates in some seats who aren't going to win. There's some of them are actually really impressive. Your people like Siobhan McAllister in East Antrim. They are really impressive, and it would have been good to showcase them as well. But anyway, Alison, what did you give it out of 8?
I am going to give it a 7.
A 7. Okay. Chris.
I'd give this one 7.5.
7.5. Okay. And Alan.
I went up from 8 to 9 on the basis that it was so tight visually that it was a wee short film that worked, and I love the line about hot tempers at Stormont don't heat a single home. That is the best line.
Tattooed me.
I mean, it's the best line out of any of the PEBs.
Yeah.
So I think at a 9.
So you're at a 9. Okay. Oh, I am a 7. So I stuck with with the theme. Okay, we're going to go on next to the Alliance Party, who are kind of like the Ireland in Eurovision Song Contest type thing of the Slugger PB things. They have had the best record of winning. They won the last time. So you can watch the Alliance Party's PB on the post. Just click the link, watch it on the iPlayer, and then come back and listen to us give our analysis of this broadcast. Okay, you're very welcome back. Alison, what did you make of Alliance's effort this time round?
I don't think they're going to win this time. Like, I have to wait to hear what the rest of us have to say, but I think that what they did do well was they moved away from the criticism in the past that it's Naomi's a one-woman party, so they downplayed her role and instead brought up and did what we've been saying, that they let the candidates speak, they let them be out and about. Lots of lovely drone footage again. Not only should you own a drone, but Derry's Peace Bridge must be the most droned place. And is there anyone's PB that didn't have a quick glimpse of Derry's Peace Bridge?
TV.
Yeah, we haven't got there. We haven't got there yet. Yeah. So I think that all of that, it looked quite positive, but it was low on substance. I think that you could see that some of it had just been clips that were taken from other things and they were sort of jammed together. I do think it looked like it had been put together in a hurry, almost. You know what I mean? It didn't look like somebody had thought it through from a start and a middle and an end. Just like lots of bits put together all over the place. I definitely don't think it was, because in the past they've been really good at their party election broadcasts. I thought this one, there was nothing wrong with it. It was just a bit dull.
Okay. Chris.
I came into this with the expectation that it was going to be like it was, and it was. So it's kind of, there was no difference in it. So there doesn't seem to be much of an innovation in it. It's perfectly good, very well produced, great use of the subtitling, great use of the graphics. I think Naomi Long has another career in voiceover artistry. She is brilliant actually when you listen to the cadence in her voice and the light and shade she puts into it. She's very, very strong, and it's great that actually the party leader has that key attribute when it comes to this sort of stuff at this part of the election. So, yet again, the kid in the swing was wheeled out. There's a kid in the swing later on in this thing that I've
We should have buzzword bingo.
I'm very concerned.
We should have bingo cards that you gotta tick things off.
Alexa, iPhone, AirPods, kid on a swing. Yeah, so
drone footage, Foyle Ridge.
It talked about its openness about needing to elect more MLAs, because that's the problem that they have. And they talked about that, and they were like, right, okay, please elect us. So I think that bit of that direct appeal was actually quite useful for them. So was it what I expected? Absolutely. Was it good? Yes. Did it innovate from the last time around? No, because the formula is kind of good. But was I looking for something else? I'd have loved to have been challenged this time around like I had been previously. So all in all, strong as usual.
Yeah, they're usually the best. So you go, oh, this is going to be good, and then I watch it, and I just thought, just a bit underwhelmed.
And that's a good point about the expectation, because Alliance, again, historically have done really well in
Yeah.
this. So, Alan, what was your thoughts on that?
Good music, tempo. I think it was very female focused.
Yeah.
I think it felt like it was appealing to female voters. You could see that the kind of people like Nuala, Kate, Saoirse Eastwood, who I've never seen look as scared in front of a camera in my life. But anyway, but I mean, it was, but people who were who want lots of votes, so that you could tell who they were targeting, because they got to speak on it. I would kind of love to see a compendium of just how many party election broadcasts that Tim Morrow on his farm has been in, because basically he and his family, I think over about the last 20 years, must have been in nearly all of them. So that would just do for some time. Together We Can, yeah, it was fine. It wasn't as fun as they weren't trying to be fun like the cartoony ones any longer.
Yeah.
Ginger Ninja appears to be gone, which is a bit of a shame because it was a really good hoot when it lasted. But yeah, it was perfectly good. It just wasn't exciting. But I think it probably, although I'm not going to give it huge marks, it probably will reach the demographic it needs to reach. It'll reassure them that there's a job to be done, and people will go, and people who were maybe kind of thinking it might get the vote out, which is all it needs to do.
Yeah, I thought it was good that they utilised some of the other people they've got in their team, because these are going to be if polls are right, some of the faces we saw, in fact, a good lot of them are going to be MLAs. They did utilise their local election footage. I'm glad you spotted Mickey in there too. Mickey Murray will be well known on social media. He has long hair and that was for the locals in 2019.
But a lot of it looked like it was from a long time ago.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of it, and someone
Yeah.
took cheap sort of footage that was available and just rammed it all together.
Yeah, so I thought it was good to see the bench there. We saw less of Naomi than we did before. I liked aspects of the messaging, I thought, for an Alliance voter. I thought they could have actually been a bit stronger about the collapse of Stormont. I remember their 2017 broadcast focused very heavily on that. Like, started off with that black and white imagery and then the light appeared. I thought that was really positive. They could have done that again. They didn't for some reason, because Alliance have scored big in 2019 by saying, demand better. Let's forget that. They could have done that a wee bit more, I thought. But overall, look, a solid effort. I mean, I agree with Alison and Alan about there was just a bit of flatness in it.
Yeah.
But then I wonder, was that because I had high expectations of the I had low expectations of the UUP going in. I had high expectations of Alliance going in, so I wonder if that coloured my wee bit of it. But anyway, I gave it an 8 out of 10, which is solid. But again, Alliance has scored better for me in the past. But Alan, what did you give Alliance in this go?
I gave it 7.5.
7.5. Okay. Alison, what'd you give?
I give it a 6.
6. Jeepers. What about you, Chris?
I go for 8.5 because I think, over the last elections they've always consistently been good. So, against as the comparator to the other ones, it's still right up there, even though it did a wee bit of a lackluster.
God, we're more up and down than their poll ratings.
It's just, when you make too many of the same film, you keep making too many,
This
the
is
same
Fast and
sequels.
Furious.
It is Fast and Furious.
This one's cheaper to make.
It's the Hangover 3. Like, you know what I mean?
They must
It's
be putting money into
just
social media ads, and they're not putting it into the party election broadcast. And maybe that's a good thing, because who changes their vote based on one of these?
Okay, well this is fascinating, because so far Alliance have not just dropped down one spot, they've dropped down a few. So we'll get to the final thing. We're going to move on to outside the executive parties. We're going to go to the TUV. Traditional. Well, we don't want to warn them yet. We want you to watch it. So click the link on the post, watch it, and you can come back and hear our thoughts on it after that. So we're back with traditional unionist voice. Chris, I'm going to go to you first. Kick us off here. What did you think of the TUV?
Well, I nearly had it for my IT manager today to go. I got a virus on my laptop. I watched it a couple of times. I just thought it's very strange. It's like, am I using an Atari as well? And this sort of over pronunciation by the voiceover person as well, which I think is one of the candidates, which is really strange. So I just think it came out of the traps very weirdly. It took 35 seconds to mention Sinn Féin. Thought it was going to be earlier, so I lost the bet against myself. Lots of legacy stuff in there. This fluffy mic made an appearance a lot of times.
It's like a big rat.
A big rat, the microphone rat, the Roland rat just kept on, did they clean it between takes? So they've all probably got COVID now. But delighted to get through it, to be honest with you, and to come out the other side. Not fully warned.
Ouch. Okay, Chris, wow, don't hold back, mate. Alan, what did you think of it?
It didn't disappoint in terms of, it felt very TUV. So if you're it would certainly attract. I would imagine it would attract their vote to come out. So it did the kind of the unashamedly squander, scandalous, bloodthirsty, gallant, iniquitous, it's trade busting protocol. So it used all the right words except Stormont. It had a lot of Jim Allister, who is a big part of their brand. The music in it, since I was kind of focusing on this piano player who had got to a very creepy stage, so it's very unsettling piano and strings, which was quite clever because they are trying to make you feel that this thing is not fit for purpose and needs change. So, but it was the one that made you feel there's a slight horror thing. We're going to get a jump scare in a second. Somebody's going to come on and go whoa, and it said that was at the beginning with a big flashing thing. And they referred to the Poots post, which is actually quite it's a good gag, but it's quite technical, and you have to kind of remember about Lauren and things to do it. And the weirdest bit at the end is Jim, who kind of brings his fists together talking about strength, and it just looks kind of he's not a muscly kind of bodybuilding guy, but this kind of the choreography of it just looked a bit strange, and then the lighting went a bit funny. So it was uber TUV. So I love it for the fact that it did not try and jump out of brand. It didn't jump the shark. It stayed on brand, but it didn't really. Would it attract DUP voters to vote for them? I'm a bit undecided whether it actually that's the job it was there to do, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm a bit undecided about that. But as a bit of a 3-minute short film, gosh, it was a pastiche of itself. It was brilliant.
Right, Alison, what did you make of the TV's effort this time?
It was terrifying.
It worked.
It was absolutely terrifying. The warning bit at the start, I literally thought World War III had started. I thought Putin's pushed the button. I was going to go, it was like, you know those Cold War duck and cover films that they used to show to American school children? It was like one of those. I was like, get under the table quickly. They're coming. It was literally terrifying. I do think that they missed a trick because was a ready-made party election broadcast at umpteen protocol rallies that have taken place. All they had to do was send a cameraman. They are, Jim's people. He is treated at those protocol rallies like the Messiah. Why didn't they send someone along to film him, in his blood and thunder on the stage and the people all adoringly clapping at him? That would have made a very easy and cheap party election broadcast for him, instead of, none of those people. We don't expect politicians to be actors, but clearly because Jim is the man who does all the media, none of them have any media experience, and you could tell they hadn't had any media training either, so they all looked terrified, anyone that had to speak.
I thought it did hit some of those bases. It was kind of good that they didn't just solely focus on Jim. I'm amazed it took them as long to get to the protocol, actually. I'm amazed. I thought
restraint.
When I heard the protocol, I thought it would be the protocol. That would be it, and then we wouldn't get anywhere else. So I was a bit surprised at that. But I think for their voter, like the people they've got over to the TV, I think it was I think it was decent enough to keep them there. The music was. I think the music could have ebbed off a wee bit. It could have ebbed off a wee bit.
A bit stabby.
So
Jaws, somewhere to do.
Yeah, it was a wee bit Jawsy, but yeah. So anyway, Alison, what'd you give it out of 6? Sorry, sorry, my type correct. What did you?
6 out of 6.
Sorry, Alison, what did you give it out of 10?
I've given it 5, and only because I'm afraid that if I don't, the person who made it might come near my house at some point. It's 5 out of 10. I know what you're saying. They have a very specific demographic that they're trying to appeal to, but they missed a trick. They missed a trick not getting one of those big protocol band parades and Jim on the stage into it. I think that was that they definitely could have done more with it, and also that warning bit at the start scared the life out of me.
Okay, Chris.
I'm going for 6 out of 10. I think I agree with Alison and everything she said. It's this overuse of these massive words that they seem to come out with all the time. Like,
that's scandalous.
I just don't understand why they do it, because no voter can understand what does the annexation of something actually mean. You have to reach for something to try and find that out for yourself. You have to Google it. So anyway, over the heads of a lot of people, probably not going to do what it needs to do and draw on upon the DUP vote that might give a preference as readily as they think it will. So 6 out of 10.
Okay, what do you say, Alan?
I'm giving it 6.5 out of 10 because I've kind of been wobbling between 7 and 6.5, which isn't probably going to make much difference in the overall ranking. And it's terribly male. It's terribly kind of the bit at the end. I think they lose half a part for the very end, the very last shot with the kind of putting the fists together, which it could have made a heart, but probably didn't. Yeah, so 6.5.
6.5. Okay, well, I was the most charitable. I gave it a 7, just because I thought it would speak to those people. I don't think it'll do a huge amount to kind of grow their base, but a lot for the TV this time is going to be about getting those unionists behind them and stopping them drifting off to the DUP in particular. Okay, so that is the TV. We're going to move on to the Green Party now. We're on the home stretch. The Green Party election broadcast, you can listen to that or watch that now on the iPlayer, and then you can come back and hear what we have to say about it afterwards. So we're back, and we're going to start off with Alison on the Green Party. Alison, what did you make of their attempt?
Well, what I thought was interesting was a lot of the other party political broadcasts mention the environment, because they do know, especially for younger parties, how important now that the environment and those environmental issues are. But obviously the Greens are the OGs of the environment, so they own that. And it's interesting that came second to all their other achievements at Stormont. It was a really good idea to have, Rachel and Claire Bailey walking along talking about all of the bills that they passed in Stormont, because the one thing that when I'm out and about and you're speaking to ordinary people, go, sure, what do they ever do? What do they ever do for us? So to say, for Rachel Wood to be able to say, we passed, I passed the bill that will allow domestic abuse victims to have paid leave. Then Claire sent about the Safe Zones bill to stop people, hanging around clinics and harass people, all of those sort of things. So that was good. And then they went on to the environment. The only bit that made me laugh was when Mal O'Hara jumped out of a tree. Was he hiding in there? And I was like, what do you think? And he just bounced out. And I don't know what he was doing. It clearly hadn't cost an awful lot of money to make. It was very, low enough budget, but it put forward all their candidates, the people who they want to increase their vote and to get elected. It showcased themselves in a good way, and it was really positive, which is what you would expect anyway from the Green Party. I thought it was a good effort.
Okay. Alan, what do you make of the Greens?
The main thing that I made of it was that it was 5 minutes instead of 3. So they'd obviously gone for the longer slot. I'm not quite sure how that works, I assume they have a choice of how long it is, and nearly everybody else goes for 3, and it's 3 is enough for these kind of things. But I liked it. I like the fact that they have way more than 4 candidates, but the 4 that they're kind of targets in a sense were the ones. So we saw Claire, we saw Rachel, we saw Brian, we saw Mal, and that's it. That's all we needed to see. We should understand that. I thought it was very good that they mentioned the bills that they got through at the end. I thought the staging of it actually, despite the fact it's probably quite fast to make and maybe relatively cheap, but there was a sense of actually there were well framed shots. Claire's one kind of going down the alley kind of things with stuff on either side. It was kind of a bit more modern. It was a bit more edgy. I don't want to be kind of too past remarkable on jackets and hair and things, but it all toned in really well, and I thought actually that works. And there's got a bit of effort that the people actually, they look like themselves, like Brian still looked like Brian, but it was a kind of a pretty good version of them, and it looked good on camera, and that doesn't happen accidentally. There's a creative vision that kind of made it happen. And then they ended up at one point up the DUP's hill. It was the Belfast one rather than the Mournes, but so Hills kind of came back, and I started to feel that I should take more marks off the DUP for getting up early in the morning. So yeah, it was very kind of nondescript. It just did what it needed to do without making wasn't flash, but I thought it was very effective. Okay. And I would say it'll be it was a good apart from the 5 minutes, it would have been it was grand for what they needed.
Yeah, I thought the production, that's probably the strongest production the Greens have had, but they went a bit too long. I thought 5 minutes way too long. Chris, what do you think?
Obviously, the length of it was a bit bizarre. If you look at the back end of it, they spent a full minute doing the "it's time" thing, and I was like, "It's time to finish this a wee bit." It's dragging
on.
But
it's probably 3 or 5. Because so you bust the 3.
It's time to do 17 things. Yeah. So get on with it. I think they placed emphasis on their legislative success, and I think you can get a real sense of pride that they have, and rightly so, because with 2 MLAs punched well above their weight. The idea around the standing against a wall, it looked like somebody had gone out and located some of these places, because the graffiti actually tied in quite well. Yeah. And it wasn't stuff that you could readily see around Belfast. So they've gone down alleyways and they've scouted out.
There'll be really good pubs down the big bars that you haven't seen.
So the language of possibility was there, which is kind of a green narrative. The climate stuff was obviously in, but it was a strong narrative overall, and I thought it was a very good showing.
Okay. Alison, what'd you give them out of 10?
I hover between 7 and 8. I think I'm going to go for 7.5.
7.5. Okay. Chris.
7.5 for me as well.
7.5. Okay. Alan.
7.
7. Okay. You just had to break the link. I have 7.5 too.
Makes it easier for you to read.
You just had to break the link as well. But okay, so that's where we end up with the Greens. And last, but certainly not least, we're going over to the left now. People Before Profit, who you can watch also on the post. Just click the link, watch it on the outlier, and come back and listen to what we had to say about it. Okay, we're back with People Before Profit's effort. Alan, what'd you make of it?
Well, it had Jerry, it had Fiona, it had Sean, and those are clearly the candidates who stand a chance of getting back or getting in. So it did the right thing by focusing on them. Sean, I haven't really come across very much before, but was kind of quite impressive in it. Fiona, I've always been kind of impressed with her, and she talks very well to camera. I think that was really kind of smart. Jerry needs to smarten up a bit. If I'm going to be sartorial, I'm going to have a go at him. That hoodie really, or it's kind of whatever it is, it doesn't work. He just looks sloppy. It's a party election broadcast. That needs to be better. Kind of taking a look at big parties' record of achievement. It's a reasonable line. However, they have been in the Assembly kind of for several goes now. What is their record of achievement? So in a sense, I want to compare it with the Greens and kind of go, well, the Greens were able to say we've got these private members bills passed, we kind of disrupted these things, and the People Before Profit, we just kind of were still there. And even the cameo from Eamon McCann, it's kind of like oh yes, it reminded me that he lost a seat the last time, and so why are we hearing about the guy who lost a seat? Oh, that's because we want Sean to come in and replace him. But it's kind of harking back to good old times, and that didn't kind of quite work. I had to look up sophism, so it made me go, which is a clever but false kind of argument used to deceive. So like using words that are not part of the normal vocabulary. And maybe I live in Lisbon, maybe we don't have a big vocabulary, but that was a bit of a scandal and failure, or no longer the norm. Walking towards the camera was it's quite cliched, but it works. It was kind of okay, but it was I expected more, but maybe this is People Before Profit. Maybe this was as organised as it gets. It felt a wee bit chaotic, but then the party is a wee bit, it's a kind of commune of people who all believe the same thing roughly.
Chris? It's straight away played on the negative as true to form type of thing. It's never about what's possible from this political collective. It's actually, these are the bad protests that other things are doing. And that's what it is. Ian McCann comes out of left field, shouts a bit, throws his head around a wee bit, looks a bit strange, going, God, there's your man again.
Can we vote for him? He's on the
goes to Christmas past sort of thing. A few good quotes in there. I think Alan's right. The strength of the characters in this that make up this party are actually very good, very personable. And I think even sitting in a room with them, talking to a camera or talking to somebody off camera, actually might have played better, because the stitching together of some of the production was a bit weird. Walking down the street type of thing, whatever, but there was more creativity at their fingertips and in play than they've used. So overall, good people, very negative message, party of protest type of thing. It didn't blow me away, to be honest.
Okay, Alison.
Well, I think that they purposely obviously picked the 3 people in the 3 seats that they're targeting. They were right, I suppose, to ignore what they did with the last time, was because we know that their stance on Brexit cost them that foil seat.
Don't mention the war.
Their stance on Brexit cost them Eamon McCann's seat the last time, although I think he was probably glad not to have to get the bus to Stormont every day. I thought, they're a very young team, and that's good, for them, I think, and given the fact that, I think that's the people who mainly vote for them. You get that very young sort of vote. It's almost a protest vote, against the establishment. The fact that it was all filmed in very urban areas, because their vote is clearly a very urban vote, is good. The amount of sky dishes behind them was distracting me. We don't even need sky dishes anymore. I don't know why. Everyone still has them stuck to their house. And I did laugh at the end of it at the size difference between poor Fiona Ferguson, who is the most self-assured in front of a camera. She, she could media train other people. She's so confident in front of a camera. but the height difference between them, she must go home every night and her neck must be killing her because she's constantly like this and all the footage stirring up, trying to look up at everybody. But yeah, I think for what they were doing, it was grand. But again, it is negative given the fact, you know, the Greens only have 2, Jamalist only has 1. They have 1 as well. They could have said this is what we achieved, but instead, clearly, you know, they're focus on Stormont is more or less to wreck it from the inside out rather than to actually make it work. Most of the time. So, you know, I think that was a sort of negative part of their message, but it was grand. I think that they're impressive candidates, and that's you know, that's one of the positives that they have.
Yeah, I thought, again, Fiona Ferguson was the standout for me. I thought the line at the end about, you know, a better way, one that puts people before profit, I thought was good, and she delivered that. A lot of confidence. Disagree with you about Jerry and the thing. I think that socialist kind of thing. That's the base he's going for.
That works.
That if he turned up in a suit, it looks too New Labour, and that's just not who they're going for.
He goes for a sort of Liam Gallagher vibe, doesn't he? That's like his thing. Do you know what I mean? He's always had that raincoat in various different colours.
And that's where he is, and that's where his base is. So I think
$6,000 worth of
it was good target. So let's get the scores. Chris, I'll start with you first. What'd you give PDP?
Red flag isn't flying too high. 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10. Okay.
I'm going to hoist the flag up a bit because I think they did, for the cash that they probably don't have as a party. I think they did pretty well, and they had 3 people on who looked like they could be MLAs. You know, if they turned up they kind of proved the fact that those people could be MLAs on the thing. So I would give them a 7.
A 7, okay. And Alison?
I am going to give them a 7 because I think that it was. I think that showcasing their proper talent. They're clearly very, you know, talented, very young politicians. And that came across, but yeah, some of it was a wee bit distracting. So, but I'll give them a 7.
Well, I was a bit more charitable again. I gave them an 8 because I just thought again, I agree with Alan. I thought for what they could have put out. I thought it was a good shout. So,
and can we just kind of point out that there is one other party election broadcast which we are ignoring?
Yeah, into, but we're not the BBC, so we're under no.
Exactly, and it was 5 minutes long, and it was really awful. Just in terms of production. So, but I think we should just mention the fact that they exist because they should rightly complain that we have ignored them.
Yeah,
and they will.
But anyway, well done on making a 5-minute party election broadcast. That was super.
So we have the results are in. Okay, so after all the scoring that we've gone through, the Ulster Unionists with 35.5 points are this year's winners. So congratulations to the Ulster Unionists. In second place, we have the SDLP on 30.5 points.
Gosh, it's like winding the clock back 20 years.
Alliance have dropped to joint third with Sinn Féin. They won 30 points each. And then we have the Greens on 29.5. We have People for Profit on 28. And then we have the DUP on 25 and TUV on 24.5. So that is our kind of marathon.
Gosh,
section.
we'll never get an executive and First Ministers based on that.
No.
Bedlam.
But so let's face it, the song won it. You know, the song
won it, despite the fact that you were not in with the song.
Well, I could sing it from start to finish because it's embedded in my brain, but...
Well, look, thanks very much.
Here endeth
the broadcast. Thanks very much for listening in.
Apologies to all the parties who put lots of money into the things that we've just taken the piss out of in a very humorous way. We love them all, but not equally.
So anyway, thank you very much for listening. So.